Good morning, everyone. So I'm here as the VP of Weleda, and we are a natural skincare brand that's been around for nearly 100 years, but we are the best kept secret in North America. So I was brought on to the management team about 3 years ago because the company wanted to invest in North America to grow in the natural and organic space, which is growing at double-digit growth and far surpassing all those numbers we saw this morning. So it's really important area for the company. So I'm here to talk about building and rebuilding audiences in real time, because once you find an audience, it doesn't stop there. You actually have to continue to look at what you're doing and rebuild every single day. This is not working. There we go. Okay, so the heart of the marketing plan. As marketers, we're taught to start with the consumer. And we were taught to start with our core target, what's her demographics, and then we built our marketing message to reach her, and then it was fairly easy to reach her. In my case, for our company, it's a her. And we didn't even think of having a conversation with her, let alone thinking of, okay, we're talking at her, but how do we even influence her? In today's world, it's completely different. And everything we learned, well, a lot of what we learned, you can throw out the window. So there's no more linear process for getting to the consumer. There's not one consumer, there's hundreds, if not thousands of consumers. And as marketers, we have to find a way to blend traditional fundamentals of what we learned and match it with what are today's world's realities. We have to be scrappy, we have to be flexible, we have to be in constant test, learn, and move on mode, and we have to move fast. So essentially, we have to build and rebuild our target as we go along. So where do we start? Well, we still start with who is our consumer and understanding her, not just as a demographic, but as a person. And this goes back to what we just heard from Kelsey, which is learning about her persona, what makes her tick, what does she do, what are all the facets of her life, because she's more than just a consumer or a shopper, and we need to reach her wherever she is. We have to not only reach her, but we have to engage her and make sure that she wants to engage with our story and listen to us. So where did we start at Weleda? And that is, we did our traditional consumer research. We didn't even know who was buying our product at the time or what the space was about. So we had to start with the normal research that most marketers are familiar with, which is a consumer questionnaire, and we did a consumer segmentation. But what we did that I hadn't really worked on before was we took digital audiences and asked her questions within that segmentation so that we would be set up for success when we had to get into the digital world, and we already would know how to reach her. So we baked those questions into our primary research to give us a digital starting point. Then what we did was we employed a reverse segmentation. So we had a little bit of sense of who she was, and now we started there, but we also added hundreds of other audiences to this. And we started from a huge funnel and tested those audiences individually. And we did a segment building approach off of that, and we started layering them. Well, what if we took this audience that does really well and layer it with that one? Would that do better or worse? And ultimately, we arrived at hundreds of qualified audiences versus our one target. So we went from one consumer target, which we called Cheryl, and we got to 575 audiences that we found that were above average on some sort of engagement measure with our brand, whether it be engagement, whether it be a click-through, whether it be a conversion. But these people all resonated with our brand, and that's pretty amazing to be able to go from 1 to 575. So this is just a glimpse of some of those 575 that rose to the top. So here we have performance based on each audience target, and a lot of these audience targets are layers. So if you see a plus sign, that means it's a layering of more than one audience. And as a result of this testing layering, you could see who does better, or even better than our target that we thought. So Cheryl's the dark green, and she's 63.5% more likely than the average person to engage or click through with one of our ads. But then there's this other group called news and celebrities, and they're at 150%. So who knew that a natural and organic brand would resonate for a target that's news and celebrities? But the highest one on our entire list of the 575 is actually a group that is more apt to make New Year's resolutions, be interested in what we called pseudoscience, which is astrology and horoscopes and those type of things. And that's our number one audience when we tested programmatic. So it's pretty amazing. Every audience represents a revenue stream, and you get to audiences that you didn't even know would be interested in your brand. I mean, obviously, when you're writing down your persona, I don't know that reads their horoscope would actually pop up in when you're describing your persona, but here she is, number one. So it's not just about finding your target and then serving an ad. It's actually being where your target is at any point of any day and speaking to her in that exact moment. To do that, you obviously have to do more research. And what I love about online is that you can be spending media and reaching your target and doing research at the exact same time, so nothing is wasted. We quickly test through tons of creative and tons of variables, and we fail fast, and we learn, and we move on. So we test variables like a talent model in an ad versus a product, a benefit claim, or talking about the ingredient. Different copy for the same visual, and we test through all of that very quickly after defining the variables, and we get to what works best in total, but also what works best against each target. So these are the results of one of our first campaign that we did here for the relaunch in North America. And you can see here, these are the same 5 targets that we saw on that list on the other page. So Cheryl's in the middle, that's the one that was custom built off of the information we had, and then you can see here the pseudoscience on the left, and we have celebrity influenced on the right. And the numbers change. So Cheryl was middle of the pack when we just tested audiences, but when you look at how she does now, she's the highest click-through rate on the entire page because we married up the right content with her. Same for the others. We start bumping up the engagement rate, the conversion rate. I mean, here I'm showing the click-through rate. And we start looking at what resonates. And it's not always what you think. So if someone told me to build an ad to go after New Year's resolution and pseudoscience, I don't know that I'd put a baby ad in there for one of our baby products, but that's the number 2 click-through ad. So you start learning things that you never would have learned had you not done the actual tests. So how do we take that and then transfer that knowledge to the rest of our marketing mix? So we know from programmatic that our top performing audiences are our biggest opportunity, and it's the most data-driven, methodology you could use. Now, when you layer on the rest of the marketing mix, and for us specifically social media, it's really important to not lose that learning. So Jay Baer is a renowned business strategist, and he has a quote that I love. He says, "Content is fire and social media is gasoline." And I love that quote because content can only get you so far, but the social media and the influence, and it's not social media, it's whatever influence is for your brand. For us, it happens to be a lot of social media and earned PR, is the gasoline. And it can take content and make it blow up and and grow sales like you've never seen before, and nothing that you can actually test out and see it specifically. So for us, it's not just about putting out content. We have to influence. We're a skincare and beauty brand, and if you're not influencing to buy skincare and beauty, you're just not going to survive in this space. So where programmatic starts with the audiences, social media starts with the conversations. And we don't want to just take what we learned from programmatic and just think we can automatically transfer to social media. We have to do our due diligence. So for us, it was about identifying the conversations that were happening in social for our target, Cheryl, and in the spaces that we already learned about in programmatic. So for us, you can see here, the green bars are the bars where our target consumer seems to have the most conversations, and the most conversations versus just a general consumer in the beauty space. But we can't necessarily insert our brand into every conversation. I mean, if we're a skincare brand talking about food, that'd be a little strange. Or even politics. Do we want to talk about politics? Probably not right now. So we'll stick to where we can play and where we have something to add to the conversation. And for us, it was in the health and wellness space, in the beauty space, and in the mom space. Those are the areas that fit not only to our brand, but to the conversations and to what we learned in programmatic. So the next step is identifying those areas in the social media world to find out who is influencing those conversations. If I mapped those conversations, who is consistently in the center, on the periphery, and that's how we did it at Weleda. So we mapped the conversations. Not only did we see who influenced our consumer, but it's interesting because there are influencers of the influencers, and the biggest is not always the best. So we look for the people that have the most influence, not the most followers. And that's really important, especially for a small brand like us. We don't have the money, to have Kim Kardashian, but we do have the money to have people that Kim Kardashian follows, or maybe people that follow her follow someone else. And basically it all gets to the same place. And sometimes it sounds even more authentic because it is not from a big time influencer. So I'm going to show you 3 influencers, and they're all very different. And Katie Deno is a celebrity makeup artist, but she is all about green beauty. She's extremely passionate about green beauty and is trying to further even the celebrities she works on to use clean products. She not only reaches consumers, but she reaches a ton of makeup artists, which are really important for our brand because then they influence consumers. So she has less than 40,000 followers. She's not a giant influencer, but she has 23 connections in that network of beauty, which is huge, because I'll show you some other ones that are bigger than her but have less connections. So she's very influential. Not only do we look at that, we look at what media outlets follow her or use her for their quotes. And so she's all the way connected to Women's Wear Daily, Glamour, Into the Gloss. These are huge beauty publications that move the needle on your brand very quickly. Next, we have Taryn Toomey. So Taryn Toomey is an influencer. She happens to be one of the very few, if not the only influencer that crosses the direct intersection of beauty and fitness. So Taryn Toomey is founder of The Class. You can look it up. It's very interesting. It's a workout for the mind and body that's growing quite rapidly in popularity. She has some celebrities that take her class, like Jennifer Aniston, and she's kind of rising to fame. Her connections are quite different than Katie because she crosses over to fitness, which is awesome because we saw the social conversations, and fitness was a huge bump for us. So she has slightly more followers, way less connections. So that's what I was talking about. Followers does not equal connections. And she gets to publications like Yoga Journal, but also publications like Allure. So a great influencer when we're trying to be in both spaces. And lastly, this is Valeria Hinojosa. And she is an advocate in sustainability and also has a big spirituality bent to her, which is amazing because she fits perfectly with that astrology, horoscope person, and also people interested in sustainability, which our brand is as well. She gets to a completely different place in the map. So you can see her space that she covers very different than the other two. And what we learned in programmatic from her is what works best is having her talk about things on a more spiritual level to reach her followers. She's bigger, both in followers and connections, but again, she gets to a completely different space. So I'm going to show you some of their content so you can see how the same exact thing we did for programmatic, which was matching the content to the audience, we do in social. But it's actually less work for us here because the influencer, if you let them do what they do best and let them talk about your product the way that their followers will appreciate, their content works better. Oh, there's no sound.
Que tú veas que con los ojos cerrados se escucha mejor mi canción.
And now I'm going to show you, that was obviously a facial care product. Now we have Katie Jane Hughes, who is a celebrity makeup artist, quite large, pretty glam, and she talks about our facial care and other products in a completely different way.
And I went in with the smoothing facial lotion from the Wild Rose line. And then I did use Skin Food on the high points of my face where I had this shine.
And on the limbs. Like now if I was going out, I would put it all over my legs and arms. And I have to stress,
sure.
actually, a lot of people DM me and they're like, I can't get Skin Food to spread over my face. This is how I use it on my skin. I always melt it down first. And even if I don't, I kind of know how to spread it. Now it's starting to get grippy because it is an emollient texture. But you really can just like keep sweeping it around. And even though you think it might not be moving, it is, I promise. And you know, just like, it feels different to an everyday cream because it is different to an everyday cream. It's very, very rich and shiny. And you would not get that finish and shine if it wasn't this texture.
So that was a pre-Oscar Instagram takeover that her and a celebrity hair artist did for us. So all this is great, but how much does it cost? Seems like there's a lot of stuff going on that takes a lot of time and money. So here's the value of getting it right. Here is our programmatic, what we started with in terms of the cost per engagement, all the way to where we are now. So you can see here, it started quite high. This is when we very first did our audience testing at $45. And now we are down to $7, which is well below even the hurdles we give ourselves to what we would want to spend per engagement. And we see the same thing with influencer. So influencer is even more efficient given the great power it has, and obviously the influence piece comes through. So we started at $1.90 cost per engagement, and now we've almost halved it to 88 cents. So this is not, we have a pretty small marketing budget. We make our money go so extremely far because of all the data we look at and how we keep learning and moving on and just throwing things out that don't work. So beyond just costs and all these, go ahead. Oh. All these variables, we also want to look at the conversations. So it's not just about, did we get the cost down, it's what are people talking about? So for us, we want to make sure they're talking about what we want them to talk about. So the chart on the left is what we saw people, this is from social listening, what people were talking about Weleda before we started our journey here. And they were talking about everything. It was not concentrated. The Weleda stretch is actually a stretch mark oil we have that we had a contest on, so that was the thing that was talked about at that time, but it's all over the place. The one on the right is we took a dipstick when, after our skin food campaign this year, of what were people talking about in May, and this is what they were talking about. So for 4 months, we had been talking about skin food and Weleda skin food, and like I said, we have fairly small budgets, and they were talking about exactly what we wanted them to talk about. And the more people are talking about the same thing, then it just amplifies your spend even beyond that. And lastly, of course, we all want sales. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. And from what we do in programmatic and influencer and other parts of the marketing mix, we've been able to grow this brand, way past what the benchmarks are and the trends are for natural and organic. So we have double-digit retail growth. We're outpacing nearly all of our competitors. We grew on our own D2C website, which is obviously why we're all here. We grew 54% versus a year ago, and that's outpaced all of our other retail channels. We had the #1 rank after the skin food campaign of the #1 personal care SKU in the natural channel, and that goes across all categories, just the #1 SKU. And not only do we have that, but we also have the influence. So we have influencers now coming to us, micro-influencers coming to us, wanting to work with our brand, and they're asking to be paid just with product. They don't even care if they, get paid. So it's an amazing place to be when you can use the power of data in digital.
European natural beauty brand Weleda struggled to capture category growth after being outspent 20-1 by competitors. So we used data science and creativity to outsmart them. Rather than relying on what customers say, we studied how they behave in real life with a massive real-time message test with millions of customers. This allowed us to earn while we learn. We harmonized tens of millions of data points and hundreds of messages to uncover what was most motivating to Weleda buyers and what wasn't. Turns out when you're learning what works in real life with millions of real customers, you get insights far more potent and certain. We uncovered 575 sub-segments. We discovered common blogs, charities, beverage consumption, and shopping habits. Some groups were politically motivated, others practiced yoga regularly, and many were inclined to make New Year's resolutions. Weleda was a daily dose of nature to get them all back in balance. The Inner Nature campaign was born. Weleda's plant-rich lifestyle and philosophy of mindfulness help customers reconnect with the nature inside of us to let beauty shine through. And who better to help tell that story than well-established natural beauty influencers who are already Weleda users? We hosted half-day content capture sessions with each of them, and for the cost of a single 30-second commercial, generated over a year's worth of authentic story content. From continuous experimentation to programmable bidding to custom algorithms, the campaign is designed to programmatically optimize the best messages for every audience to drive the best outcome. Make that beautiful outcomes. In just 3 months, Weleda saw double-digit growth in consumption and leapfrogged over 5 competitors to claim the #4 spot in the category. Further proof that when data science and creativity get together, we engineer beautiful things.
Thank you.
Randi, thanks so much. We have time for questions of Randi.
Hi, my name is Kendall. I love the cost per engagement story you talked about. I thought it really beautifully depicts kind of the programmatic growth story and landscape. And obviously it varies brand to brand for how long it's going to take you to go from that $45 to that efficient $7 cost per engagement. But can you share like what that kind of average cycle looked like for you at Weleda?
Sure. So the $45 was about 2.5 years ago. The $7 is our most recent campaign. But we got from 45 to less than 20, I would say, in a matter of like 2 months, just from the testing, because the 45 is literally from when you had no data. So it can happen quite rapidly, and then once you get the creative, that's just the audience, and then once you get the creative in, it starts dropping. So that's why we're doing a facial care campaign right now, and the facial care is a high engagement category. So that's why we just, I guess, taking the audience with the content, we're really getting that down even further.
How and where were you overpaying?
I'm sorry?
How and where were you overpaying at that top end?
With the audience, with certain audiences, we're just expensive.
You were targeting expensive audiences.
Yeah.
And you were able, okay.
Partly that, and then also partly the creative wasn't factored in. So the creative you saw on that page, you know, if you start seeing creative for Weleda now, it looks very different. We had a lot of learning. We needed to stop talking at the brand level because we were introducing the brand. We needed to get right down to product, but somehow weave in the brand. It's almost like a flip.
So it's both audience and impact.
Yeah.
Randy, great chat. Adam with
Thank you.
AdWallet. I had a question on your $7 CPE, and then I had a hard time seeing from here. It looked like a 20 or 30 cent CPE on the social influencer side. For you guys, what's that E? Was that a sale? Was that a click? What was the engagement?
So
Was it an
engagement
action or an
is they either click through, or they come to our website and spend more than 2 minutes, or they come to our website and check out more than 2 pages. So that's how we've calculated that.
How were you discovering your influencers?
So we do the mapping, and I work with Story Worldwide, amazing influencer agency, and they map it for us, and then they basically screen for who they think would be a fit for our brand, and then they bring forward certain ones to us, and we say yay or nay, and then we also same test and learn. So the video is was done before we started this year's campaign. That video, the influencers, if you saw them, they look quite, some of them we kept, some of them we didn't, because even with the influencers, we see some are just more authentic. They can get better to their audiences. Our brand somehow fits better, and we get more engagement. And some also, when you work with influencers, we found that sometimes we start seeing they're selling out, so to speak, and start working with brands that we don't feel like is a fit for our values. So we've dropped influencers because, when started working with Aveeno, we're like, okay, that's not, we're really truly natural, so it doesn't fit.
So at the same time you're decreasing your cost of engagement costs, are you seeing other metrics change in terms of, say, lifetime value, order value? Are those things also moving as you're finding these different new targets?
Yeah, we're seeing repeat go up. We're seeing basket, like for this facial care campaign, we've seen basket value go really up. And we see other types of measures that we look at for value go up.
Randy, thank you so much. We're
Thank
going to be
you.
talking about acquisition strategies in just about 15 minutes.